The alien ship floated above Earth like a shining moon, silent and massive. Its metal surface reflected the sun, and every camera on the planet turned toward it. Inside, the great hall was filled with colors no human had seen before. Walls shifted like liquid crystal, and glowing shapes floated in the air, changing with the mood of the hosts. Rows of tall, thin aliens stood in silence, their silver eyes fixed on the small group of human guests who had been invited to this rare cultural exchange. The humans felt nervous, even though the aliens had promised peace. At the center of the hall stood a raised platform. The leader of the alien delegation, draped in robes that sparkled like stars, lifted her hands. A soft vibration filled the air. The aliens were beginning their presentation. Their music started with a faint hum, almost like the wind moving through glass pipes. Slowly, layers of sound built up, gentle tones, mathematical patterns, a harmony so delicate it felt like the air itself was sighing. The humans exchanged glances. To them, it did not sound like music at all. It was calm, almost too calm, like background noise in a meditation room. The aliens swayed slowly, their long limbs moving in rhythm to the gentle tones. Their antenna-like crests glowed faintly as they absorbed the sound, their whole bodies reacting. The hall filled with an atmosphere of order and stillness. The humans tried to smile politely, clapping softly when the performance ended. The aliens bowed deeply, proud of their offering. Then the alien leader turned to the humans. Her voice carried a strange echo, as if two people were speaking at once. "We have shared with you the song of our people. Now, honored guests, will you share the music of Earth with us?" The question hung in the air like a weight. The humans looked at each other, uncertain. They had prepared samples, classical symphonies, soothing jazz, and simple pop songs. But no one knew what the aliens would understand or enjoy. Still, they could not refuse. The invitation was clear. To decline would be seen as disrespect. One of the humans, a young man named Daniel, stepped forward. He was not a diplomat or scientist, but a technician assigned to handle the sound equipment. He carried with him a small, old music device, a relic from his teenage years. He plugged it into the hall's translator system, which would adjust frequencies so the aliens could hear as humans did. He scrolled through his playlist, his finger pausing over options. Should he pick something calm, something safe, something the aliens would find gentle? He hesitated. Behind him, his teammates whispered nervously, "Play Beethoven. Play something classical. Don't take risks." But Daniel's eyes fell on another option, one he had always loved, though many found it too loud, too chaotic. Heavy metal. His heart raced. Was it madness to play it here in front of beings who could crush Earth with a single command? He almost skipped past it, but something inside him whispered differently. The alien leader tilted her head, waiting patiently. The silence in the hall deepened. Thousands of alien eyes glowed faintly, locked on him. The humans shifted uncomfortably. Daniel swallowed hard, then pressed play. The first sound was a soft guitar riff, distorted but calm enough. The aliens blinked, tilting their heads. Then the second guitar joined, heavier, darker, building tension. The aliens' crests flickered, as if unsure what they were hearing. And then it came, the crash of drums, the roar of electric guitar, the scream of vocals that ripped through the hall like thunder. The effect was instant. Aliens froze. Some dropped to their knees, clutching their chests. Others pressed their long fingers against their heads, trembling as the sound vibrated through their sensitive bodies. The glowing shapes in the air above twisted violently, their patterns breaking apart. The hall itself seemed to pulse with the sound waves. The humans gasped, unsure if they had just committed the worst mistake of their lives. One alien gave a sharp cry, leaping backward as if struck. Another's eyes widened, glowing brighter than before, as though fire burned behind them. The music was relentless, crashing through the hall with a storm of energy. Daniel's teammates rushed forward, whispering urgently, "Turn it off! Stop it now before they think it's an attack!" But when Daniel tried to pause the track, the device glitched. The old player, worn with age, froze and refused to respond. The music blasted on. The aliens were no longer still. Their bodies moved in sharp, chaotic motions. Some stumbled, others rose higher, their voices mixing with the growls of the music in strange echoes. The peaceful order of moments ago shattered into something wild. The humans' hearts pounded in fear. They had wanted to impress the aliens, not terrify them. But then something strange happened. Amid the chaos, one young alien began moving in rhythm with the drums. His feet stomped, his head shook violently side to side. Another followed, then another. Their movements grew more aggressive, but also more synchronized. Their voices, once filled with confusion, began to sound almost like chanting, blending with the heavy metal beat. Daniel stared in shock. The aliens were not dying. They were not collapsing. They were reacting, but not with anger. It looked more like excitement. A kind of raw energy had awakened inside them, something they had hidden under centuries of peace. The music was pulling it out. The alien leader's glowing eyes locked onto Daniel. Her face was unreadable, both furious and fascinated. Around her, the hall shook with the sound of guitars and drums. Every alien present was caught in the storm of noise, their ordered world turned upside down. And Daniel realized too late that Earth had just shared not a song, but a weapon. A sound that could move armies, shatter order, and awaken chaos. The invitation had been accepted, but the price of sharing might change everything. The hall shook with the violent sound pouring out of the old human device. The heavy guitars roared, the drums pounded like thunder, and the alien voices rose in confusion. At first, the humans thought the aliens were in pain, their glowing crests flickering wildly and their limbs trembling as if struck by lightning. But the reaction spread too fast. It was no longer simple fear, it was something bigger. The aliens screamed, a sound that echoed like metallic bells breaking apart, and they moved with sharp, jerking motions that made the humans step back in alarm. One alien collapsed to the ground, clutching his head with both hands as though the sound was drilling inside his mind. Another dropped his ceremonial staff and staggered backward, his silver eyes wide, his whole body twitching with the beat. A third let out a sharp hiss, leaping into the air as if to attack an unseen enemy. The calm order of the hall had turned into a storm. The humans panicked. One of them, a diplomat in a dark suit, grabbed Daniel by the arm. "Stop it! Shut it down before they think it's war!" Daniel tried again to press the pause button, but the screen of the device was frozen, locked in place. The track blared on, the vocalist's growl rolling through the hall like a beast's roar. Suddenly, a line of alien guards rushed inside. They carried strange, blade-like weapons that glowed at the tips. The drums of the music pounded at the same moment their boots slammed against the floor, and the sound merged with their movement. They thought an uprising had begun, and they were ready to crush it. The humans raised their hands, shouting, "No, it's music! It's not an attack!" But their voices were drowned under the relentless wave of noise. The aliens closest to the speakers fell to their knees, trembling violently. Their sensitive organs, tuned to soft vibrations, were overwhelmed by the deep bass and crashing cymbals. Their antennae bent as though too heavy to lift, their bodies shaking with each new beat. But something strange began to show in their eyes. Instead of pure fear, a fire started to burn there. Their breaths grew heavy, their chests rising and falling in rhythm with the pounding drums. One warrior alien, tall and broad-shouldered, suddenly pulled his sword and raised it high. He shouted something in his language, a cry that echoed like a war chant. His voice matched the rhythm of the music. Others joined him, their screams layered over the human song until the hall thundered with two kinds of sound, metal and alien roars. The humans froze, horrified. They had never seen aliens like this. Their bodies, usually graceful and calm, were now twitching, stomping, shaking as if possessed. Some slammed their weapons against the floor in time with the drum beats, sparks flying as steel met metal. Others began to leap and spin, their movements wild but strangely synchronized, as though the music itself was controlling them. Daniel could hardly breathe. He had loved heavy metal his whole life. To him, it was energy, power, freedom. But here, in this alien hall, it looked like madness. Yet a strange thought struck him. The aliens were not resisting the sound anymore. They were moving with it. The alien elder, who had been silent in the corner, struggled to his feet. His robes shook as he pointed a trembling finger at the humans. His voice cracked as he shouted, "This is not music. This is the call of battle." His words sent a shock through the crowd. Some aliens gasped, others screamed louder. They believed him. The guards gripped their weapons tighter, their bodies trembling as if ready to attack, not the humans, but anyone in their way. The pounding music had turned their instincts loose. The careful, controlled society they had built for centuries could not resist this raw, violent rhythm. It was awakening something inside them, something primal. One young alien female dropped to her knees, her glowing eyes wide, her body shaking uncontrollably. She slammed her fists against the floor in rhythm with the drums, over and over until her hands bled. Another alien followed, then another. Soon, a whole section of the crowd was pounding the floor, turning the hall into a giant drum that echoed with the heavy metal beat. The sound grew even louder, echoing through the ship itself. The humans backed away, pressed against the wall, not knowing whether they had unleashed disaster or discovery. Their voices were useless now. Nothing could be heard over the storm of sound and chaos. Daniel's teammates begged him, pulling at the device, trying to smash it, but the alien energy field around the hall somehow kept it running, feeding it with power. It was as if the ship itself had become an amplifier, refusing to let the song die. Then something even more shocking happened. A group of aliens, their faces twisted with fierce joy, rushed toward each other and slammed their bodies together. The collision was loud and brutal, but instead of anger, they laughed, a deep guttural laugh that sounded like triumph. They did it again and again, their movements becoming wilder, yet perfectly in sync with the music. The humans stared in disbelief. The aliens were fighting, but not to kill. They were moving like soldiers training for war, like dancers in a violent ritual. Heavy metal had not destroyed them. It had given them a rhythm their bodies could not resist. The alien leader, standing on the raised platform, watched with glowing eyes. She did not speak, but her face showed both fury and fascination. The hall was no longer under her control. The humans had brought something she could not contain. Daniel realized the truth with a cold shiver. Heavy metal was not just entertainment here. To these aliens, it was a signal of war, a weapon of chaos, a rhythm that could shake an entire species to its core. And the worst part was, the song was only halfway finished. The hall was filled with chaos, but among the confusion, an old alien elder rose slowly to his feet. His movements were shaky, and his robe trembled as he leaned on his staff. His silver eyes glowed faintly, and for a long moment, he simply listened to the music. The guitars screamed, the drums pounded like heartbeats of giants, and the growling voice echoed through the chamber. The elder's lips parted, and a low whisper escaped him. The call of the Titans. The words carried across the hall, echoed by the strange acoustics of the ship. Many aliens froze when they heard them. They turned their heads sharply, their glowing crests flickering with nervous light. For younger ones, the name meant nothing. But for the older generation, the words brought memories buried deep, stories told in secret, and warnings passed down through generations. Daniel, standing with his team, felt the weight of the moment, but did not understand. To him, it was just heavy metal. But the way the aliens reacted made his stomach twist. The elder raised his staff high, and his voice grew stronger. This sound, it is the sound of our ancestors. The war drums of the great conflict, the voices of those who fought before peace was forged. How is it possible that humans carry the same power in their songs? A murmur spread through the aliens. Some clutched their heads, trying to deny it, but others began nodding, trembling as if they, too, felt the truth. One warrior's eyes glowed bright red as he shouted, "It cannot be coincidence. The humans, they hold the voice of war." His words lit a fire in the hall. Aliens began to argue, their voices overlapping, their bodies shaking with the rhythm of the music that still thundered around them. The elder staggered forward, his steps heavy, his gaze locked on Daniel. "Do you know what you have unleashed, human? This is no song. This is the rhythm that awakened armies. The same rhythm that turned our kind into beasts of destruction. We buried it. We silenced it for 1,000 years. And now, you bring it back." His voice cracked, half filled with fear and half with awe. Daniel's hands trembled. He wanted to tell them it was just a band from Earth, men with guitars and drums, nothing more. But he could see in their eyes that no explanation would matter. To them, this music was not entertainment. It was history, and it was alive. The aliens closest to the elder began chanting softly, their voices falling into the rhythm of the song. The elder closed his eyes as though remembering something long forgotten. He spoke again, his voice almost breaking. "In our past, when war consumed the stars, our people created the call of the Titans. It was not a song but a weapon of the spirit. Its sound made warriors fearless. It drowned pain. It turned fear into rage. It united whole armies into one unstoppable storm. The humans' faces turned pale. They exchanged nervous glances, realizing the danger. If the aliens truly believed this music was their ancient weapon, then Earth would never be seen the same way again. The younger aliens grew restless, stomping their feet, their movements growing wilder with every second. They screamed into the air, their voices shaking the walls. One slammed his weapon against the floor, sparks flying, as if to test his strength under the influence of the music. Another clawed at the walls, leaving marks as though unable to control his body. The elder's voice grew louder, carried by the music itself. We thought the call was lost. We believed it buried in the dust of forgotten wars. But you, humans, you bring it freely, as if it is nothing. Do you not know the power you hold? Daniel swallowed hard. His throat felt dry, but he forced himself to speak, shouting above the music. It's just music. It's only sound, not a weapon. We don't use it for war. We use it for energy, for passion, for life. His words echoed, but the aliens did not believe him. To them, the heavy riffs and pounding drums were no different from the war cries of their ancestors. The alien leader, standing at the center, fixed her gaze on the elder. Her eyes glowed like molten silver. You claim this is the call of the Titans, she said slowly, her voice calm but sharp. If that is true, then the humans are not what they seem. They are not fragile. They are not weak. They carry in their blood the same madness that once drowned our stars. Gasps filled the hall. Some aliens bowed their heads, frightened by her words, while others shouted in agreement, their voices raw with excitement. The music drove them further into frenzy, and every second the song played, their instincts grew stronger. Daniel's heart pounded. He understood now that heavy metal was not just strange to the aliens. It was dangerous. It touched something deep in their species, something they had worked centuries to hide. And now, humans had dragged it back into the light without meaning to. The elder's staff shook in his hands. His voice grew weak again as he whispered, "The Titans will awaken. The rhythm will not let them sleep." He looked at Daniel as though the young human was not a boy with a music player, but a messenger of war. All around, the aliens' glowing eyes burned brighter. Their movements became more violent, yet strangely unified. The music had turned fear into hunger, order into chaos, and silence into a storm. They looked at the humans no longer as guests, but as beings carrying a secret weapon. Daniel wanted to end it, to smash the device and stop the sound, but it was too late. The song had already awakened something that could not be silenced. The aliens had remembered their past, and they would never hear music the same way again. The alien starship trembled as the music blasted through every wall and corridor. The heavy riffs rolled like thunder, the drums pounded like explosions, and the growling voice echoed as if some ancient beast had been released inside their sacred hall. The control panels along the walls flickered, their lights blinking red and green, unable to hold steady. Doors opened and slammed shut on their own, and holographic displays twisted into broken shapes. The ship was alive with chaos, and the humans stood frozen in the middle of it, watching the disaster unfold. The alien guards had already stormed into the hall, weapons drawn. Their sharp, glowing blades pulsed with nervous energy. They expected a rebellion, an attack, something violent, but what they found was stranger. The aliens inside the hall were no longer standing in still rows. They moved wildly, their long limbs jerking to the rhythm of the music. Some struck the floor with their feet, stomping harder and harder, making the ground vibrate in time with the beat. Others smashed their weapons against the walls, sparks flying as they followed the rhythm like drummers in a battlefield march. The humans pressed back, trying to stay out of the chaos. Daniel's hands shook as he clutched the broken music device that refused to stop. The old screen glowed faintly, stuck on the track. His teammates shouted in panic, but their voices were swallowed by the roar of guitars and drums. The alien leader, standing high on the platform, had her eyes locked on the humans. Her gaze burned with both fury and fascination. She wanted answers, but even she could not silence the storm once it had begun. One of the guards tried to step forward, raising his blade to strike the sound system, but before he could, another alien warrior grabbed him and shoved him back. The two clashed, snarling in their language. Then, as if the music demanded it, they began slamming their weapons against each other, not in anger, but in rhythm. The clash of steel against steel became another beat in the growing storm. The other guards hesitated, torn between stopping the madness or joining it. Then it spread further. A group of younger aliens threw their heads back, their glowing eyes rolling as their bodies started to thrash in time with the music. They bent low, then snapped upright, their long hair whipping through the air. The humans realized in shock they were headbanging. The aliens did not know the word, but their bodies understood the rhythm. Their movements were wild, uncontrolled, yet perfectly matched with the sound. Daniel's teammate, a woman named Claire, grabbed his arm and yelled, "They're losing their minds. If this doesn't stop, the ship will tear itself apart." But Daniel's eyes were fixed on the aliens. He saw their faces, twisted not in pain, but in something closer to joy. It was terrifying, but it was real. Heavy metal was not killing them. It was waking them. Suddenly, alarms rang throughout the ship. The sound system had connected with the alien network, spreading the music into other parts of the vessel. Hallways echoed with the same thunderous rhythm, and soon the stomps and screams of aliens outside the hall joined the chorus. The entire starship had become a concert arena without warning. The floor shook as hundreds of boots stomped together. The walls vibrated with the low growl of alien voices screaming in time with the music. The humans clung to each other, their ears ringing. They had never seen such raw energy unleashed. What was once a silent, controlled species now moved like a storm, united by noise. One alien warrior raised both arms high and screamed with such force that his voice matched the singer's growl in the track. Others copied him, their voices layering into a monstrous choir. The hall thundered with two sounds now, human heavy metal and alien battle cries. The mixture was terrifying and powerful. The alien leader's silver eyes glowed brighter, her body trembling as though she herself was fighting against the rhythm. She gripped the rail in front of her tightly, her claws digging into the metal. Her lips pressed together, but no command came out. Even she, the one who ruled over them, could not speak above the storm. Daniel's stomach dropped as he realized something else. The aliens were not just reacting at random, they were forming patterns. Their stomps, their weapon clashes, their screams all fell into place as if the music was guiding them into formation. It was not chaos anymore. It was order of a new kind, violent and strange. The aliens were turning the hall into a battlefield dance, an army rehearsal powered by human sound. Claire pulled at him again, her face pale. "They're going to kill each other! Or us! Do something!" Daniel shook his head helplessly. "I can't stop it. It's like the ship itself wants the music." The lights above flickered again, and for a moment everything went dark. In the blackness, the only sound was the pounding of drums and the collective screams of the aliens. Then the lights came back, shining red now, like warning signals across the hall. The aliens glowed under the crimson light, their bodies looking more monstrous than ever as they slammed against each other in rhythm. Two alien females locked arms and spun violently, crashing into a group of warriors. Instead of anger, the warriors joined them, slamming shoulders, spinning, colliding, laughing with sharp, guttural sounds. It looked brutal, but no one stopped. They had created their first mosh pit without even knowing it. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. He had gone to concerts on Earth. He had seen humans do the same thing, but never like this. Here, it felt like the birth of something unstoppable. The aliens were not just hearing heavy metal. They were being consumed by it, transformed by it. The hall thundered with stomps, clashes, screams, and guitars. Every second, the ship shook harder, the walls groaning under the vibration. The humans stood trapped in the middle of it, watching a species unravel and rebuild itself in front of their eyes. And Daniel knew with a sinking heart that the chaos was only beginning. The song still had minutes left to play. The music roared on, louder and wilder, and what had started as screams of confusion turned into something different. The aliens no longer looked as if they were in pain. Their movements changed. Their bodies began to follow the rhythm in ways they themselves did not understand. They slammed their weapons together like giant drumsticks, creating sparks that flashed in time with the beat. Their stomping feet shook the floor until the whole hall echoed like a massive drum. The chaos was no longer chaos. It was becoming a performance, a violent dance that none of them had ever practiced before. Daniel's eyes widened as he realized what he was seeing. He had been to concerts on Earth where people threw themselves into a wild crowd, slamming and colliding in a storm of energy. He had laughed and shouted as humans called it a mosh pit. But here, on this alien ship, an entire species was discovering the same thing on their own. It was raw, dangerous, and alive. The aliens screamed in their strange language, but the screams had rhythm now, almost like chants that fit perfectly with the crashing guitars and drums. One tall alien warrior roared, raised his blade, and slammed it against the ground. Instead of starting a fight, others copied him, their blades smashing down in unison, sparks flying everywhere. The glowing floor flickered under the strikes, but the aliens laughed. Laughed with a sound Daniel had never heard before, like 1,000 bells breaking. Their eyes glowed brighter, their bodies moving in rhythm, their fear replaced by something that looked like pure joy. Claire clung to Daniel's arm, her voice shaking. "They're enjoying it. Do you see? They're not afraid anymore." Daniel nodded slowly, his chest tight. "They think it's war, but it feels like celebration." The aliens spun, crashed into one another, and shouted like soldiers drunk with victory. Some climbed onto the high beams of the hall, throwing themselves into the crowd below, their bodies caught by dozens of hands before being tossed back into the madness. Daniel's jaw dropped. Stage diving. They had never seen it, never been taught it, but they were doing it now. The music had taught them without words. The guards who had first rushed in with weapons drawn no longer looked like defenders of order. They had joined the storm completely, their blades slamming against shields, their mouths open wide as they screamed along with the guttural voice of the human singer. The humans pressed against the wall, barely believing what they saw. An entire species was not just listening, they were transforming before their eyes. Daniel looked around, his heart racing. What if this got out of control? What if the music pushed them too far? He imagined the ship tearing itself apart from the frenzy. Yet, at the same time, he could not look away. He felt goosebumps rise on his arms because this was more than chaos, it was connection. Music had crossed a line between species. The alien leader stood high above, her silver eyes glowing like molten fire. Her lips parted slightly, and her chest rose and fell in heavy breaths. Even she could not resist the rhythm. Her hands gripped the rail, then released, her body trembling before she finally raised both arms. When she screamed, it was louder than all the others, her voice joining the roar. The crowd below answered her, tens of voices blending into one violent choir. The humans gasped. This was no longer confusion. It was unity. Every alien was moving, stomping, slamming, thrashing, and screaming together. The hall had turned into an arena, a battlefield that was not filled with blood but with sound. The order and silence of their species had been shattered by noise, and what rose in its place was something wild and unstoppable. Daniel whispered to himself, "They're moshing. They're really moshing." The word felt absurd in this place, but it was the truth. The aliens had discovered the same primal energy humans found in heavy metal. For humans, it was rebellion, freedom, and power. For aliens, it was something more. It was awakening buried instincts that had been silent for centuries. Two young aliens slammed into each other, fell to the ground, then rose laughing, their glowing eyes locked on each other with fierce joy. Others formed circles, spinning around wildly, colliding with shoulders and elbows. The sound of their feet stomping became another drumbeat layered into the music. The hall was no longer just hearing heavy metal, it had become part of it. Claire's fear slowly faded into awe. She whispered, "They're not breaking, they're becoming something new." Daniel swallowed hard. "No," he said, his voice low. "They're remembering what they used to be." The song neared its climax, the riffs growing faster, the drums rolling like thunder without end. The aliens moved even harder, their bodies crashing together like waves in a storm. Sparks flew, voices screamed, weapons clashed, and the floor shook with every stomp. The humans covered their ears, but even through the pain, they felt the energy surging. It was terrifying, yet it pulled them in, like fire that could burn but also warm. At the heart of the storm, one alien threw back his head and bellowed, his voice merging perfectly with the growl of the human singer. For a moment, human and alien sounds became one, indistinguishable, as if the species themselves had blended together. The others joined, chanting, screaming, slamming, their bodies fueled by the same rhythm. Daniel realized with a chill that this was no longer just a reaction to strange music. This was a ritual now, born in the moment, but one that might never be forgotten. Heavy metal had given the aliens not only sound, but identity. It had turned confusion into celebration, fear into power, and strangers into something like brothers in arms. The final note of the song rang out, echoing across the hall like the last strike of a war drum. For a long moment, silence followed, broken only by the heavy breathing of thousands of aliens who had moved like warriors in a storm. Their glowing eyes fixed on the humans. No one clapped, no one spoke. The silence was heavier than the noise had been. Then, slowly, one alien stomped his foot. Another followed. Then more and more until the whole hall shook again, not with fear, but with demand. They wanted more. The humans stared, horrified and amazed. Heavy metal had not just entertained the aliens, it had claimed them. The hall still vibrated with the echoes of the last song, the aliens breathing heavily like an army after battle. Their glowing eyes locked on the humans, and their stomping slowly faded into silence. The alien leader, standing high above them, raised one hand. Her silver crown pulsed with light as she studied the humans with an expression that was hard to read, part anger, part curiosity, and part something deeper. She did not speak right away. She let the silence grow heavy, as though testing whether the humans could endure it. Then her voice rang out, sharp and clear, carrying across the chamber. "You, fragile creatures, how do you hold such power in your sound?" Her words made the air tremble. She stepped forward, her long robes flowing behind her. "You call this music? We call it the voice of the battle singers. No being has dared to use it in centuries." Daniel stepped back, his mouth dry. "It's just music," he said quickly, his voice shaking. "On Earth, people create songs to express themselves. It's not meant to be a weapon." But the leader narrowed her glowing eyes, her lips curling slightly. "A weapon does not ask to be a weapon," she said. "A flame does not ask to burn. It burns because that is its nature. This sound you carry, it awakens instincts buried deep within my people. It stirs blood. It shakes fear away. Do you know what that means?" The aliens below began to mutter and hiss, their voices rising again in excitement. The young ones stomped their feet, begging for more sound, their bodies trembling like addicts desperate for another taste. The leader lifted both arms, silencing them instantly. Her voice thundered, echoing from the walls. "If humans control this sound, then humans are not weak as we believed. You are not prey. You are not fragile. You are something else entirely." Claire whispered to Daniel, panic in her tone. "They think we did this on purpose. They think we've been hiding power from them." Daniel shook his head quickly. "No, they don't understand. It's just a genre. It's just fun to us." But even as he spoke, he realized the truth. To these aliens, fun was not a concept. Everything was survival, strength, or weakness. There was no middle ground. The leader's glowing crown flared brighter. She pointed a long, sharp finger at the humans. "If you can command the voice of the battle singers, then you must prove it. Not by hiding behind machines, but by wielding it yourselves." Her eyes burned with challenge. "We demand a battle concert. You will play before us, not as guests, but as warriors. If you survive, you will be honored. If you fail, you will be nothing." The aliens roared in approval, stomping and screaming like wild beasts. Their voices filled the hall, shaking the humans' bones. Daniel felt his knees weaken. "A concert?" he whispered to himself. "Here? For them?" His heart raced. He had played guitar in small earth bands, nothing more than school gyms and cheap bars, but now he was being asked to play for an alien species who believed it was war. The leader raised her hand again, silencing the crowd with terrifying ease. Her voice grew lower, but sharper. "In 3 cycles, the arena will be prepared. Tens of thousands will gather. You will step onto that stage and show us if humans can truly command the storm you have unleashed." The humans exchanged horrified looks. Claire shook her head. "We can't do this. We're not soldiers. We're not ready." Another teammate muttered, "If we refuse, they'll think we're cowards. We'll never leave this ship alive." The weight of the decision pressed on them like chains. Daniel swallowed hard, his mind racing. He remembered his first time hearing heavy metal as a teenager, how it had scared him at first, but then filled him with energy, giving him courage when he had none. Maybe that was why these aliens reacted this way. Maybe music wasn't just sound. It was a fire that burned the same way in all hearts, human or alien. Slowly, he lifted his head and met the leader's glowing gaze. "We accept," he said, his voice trembling but steady. The aliens roared again, the sound so loud it felt like the walls would collapse. They stomped, clashed their weapons, and screamed in excitement. For them, this was no concert. It was war given form. Daniel's teammates grabbed his arm, whispering fiercely, "Are you insane? You just promised to fight them with music." He looked at them, his eyes fierce now. "If we don't, we're dead anyway. At least this way, we stand a chance." The leader's eyes glowed brighter, and for a moment, Daniel thought he saw something like respect in them. She raised her hand high, her voice echoing across the hall one last time. "Then it is settled. Humans will face us in the battle of sound. The galaxy will know if your species is truly weak, or if you are born of chaos itself." The aliens below screamed with joy, some pounding their chests, others slamming their weapons against the floor, creating a rhythm like war drums. Their glowing eyes fixed on the humans, as if already seeing them on stage, already hearing the storm they would unleash. The humans stood in silence, their hearts pounding. They had come here as guests, carrying simple songs. Now they were being forced into a challenge that could change everything. Heavy metal had started as a mistake, but it had become a weapon in alien eyes. Daniel's hands trembled as he imagined the arena, the thousands of glowing eyes watching, the pressure of carrying Earth's pride on his shoulders. He whispered to himself, "We'll give them a show they'll never forget." But deep inside, he wondered if they could survive their own music when it was no longer entertainment but war. The alien world's grand arena stood like a mountain of stone and steel, carved into the surface of their homeworld. It stretched higher than human eyes could follow, with banners of glowing symbols hanging from its towers. Tens of thousands of aliens filled the seats, their glowing eyes burning like a sea of fireflies in the night. Their voices rumbled together, a low growl that vibrated through the air, the sound of anticipation before something ancient and dangerous. Daniel stood with his teammates just outside the stage platform, his stomach twisted into knots. He could feel the vibration of the crowd even through the floor. He had been to concerts before, but never had he felt an audience like this. An audience that believed music was not entertainment, but war. He gripped his guitar so tightly his knuckles turned white. Claire touched his shoulder, whispering, "If we fail, they'll destroy us." He nodded slowly, though his throat was too dry to answer. The alien leader stood at the highest throne in the arena, her silver crown glowing like a star. She raised her arms and the crowd fell into sudden silence. Her voice boomed, amplified by strange crystals around the arena walls. Today, humans claim they hold the voice of the battle singers. Today, they will prove it. If they master the storm, they will be honored. If they fail, they will be nothing. The crowd roared, stomping their feet until the arena floor shook like an earthquake. Daniel's heart pounded in his chest. He looked at his teammates, 3 humans with ordinary instruments, hearts beating faster than drums. They were not soldiers. They were not warriors. But they carried something the aliens could not deny, the music. The stage lit up, beams of energy glowing like fire. Daniel stepped forward, the weight of Earth pressing down on his shoulders. He strummed the first chord, and the sound blasted across the arena, carried by the alien amplifiers. The guitar screamed, raw and heavy, and the aliens froze for a heartbeat. Then the drums thundered in, rolling like the footsteps of giants, and the bass growled deep, shaking the ground beneath their feet. The aliens reacted instantly. Their bodies jerked in rhythm, their glowing crests flashing wildly. They slammed their fists and weapons against the stone, creating echoes that matched the beat. Daniel shouted into the microphone, his voice raw and fierce. His scream ripped across the arena like lightning. The aliens answered with a roar, their voices uniting into one massive cry that shook the sky itself. Claire's fingers flew across the keyboard, adding layers of sound that glittered like sparks in the storm. The drummer's arms blurred, each strike against the kit merging with the stomps of tens of thousands of alien feet. The music was no longer coming only from the stage. It was pouring from the entire arena, human and alien together. The aliens began to move as one. They formed circles, smashing into each other with wild joy, their bodies crashing like waves in a storm. Weapons clashed in rhythm, shields slammed against the ground, and the arena transformed into a living, breathing mosh pit. The humans had brought heavy metal, but the aliens had turned it into a ritual, something larger than life. Daniel's fear melted away. He felt the energy rush through him, the same fire that had once given him courage as a boy. He screamed louder, his guitar screaming with him, and the aliens followed, their voices layering into a monstrous choir. For the first time, humans and aliens were not separate. They were one storm, one voice, one rhythm. The alien leader watched from her throne, her silver eyes wide. Her body trembled with the music, her hands gripping the rail. Slowly, she rose to her feet. Her mouth opened, and she let out a scream so powerful it cut through the entire arena. The sound was primal, commanding, and the aliens fell to their knees, howling with her. Even the humans froze for a heartbeat at the sheer force of it. Then Daniel smiled fiercely. He struck his guitar harder, answering her cry with Earth's voice of steel and thunder. The duel had begun, not with weapons, but with sound. Daniel's band drove the music faster, heavier, louder. The aliens answered with stomps, chants, and screams that shook the arena. The sound rose higher and higher until it felt like the very air would split apart. The ground cracked beneath the weight of the rhythm. Dust rained from the stone walls. Above them, the sky shimmered as if it too was trembling. Minutes passed like seconds. By the time the final riff came, Daniel was drenched in sweat, his fingers bleeding against the strings, but he did not stop. He poured everything he had into that last scream, a cry of defiance, survival, and pride. The drums crashed like thunder, the bass roared like an earthquake, and the last note rang out, echoing across the arena like a final war cry. Silence fell. The humans stood, panting, their hearts pounding in the empty space left behind by the music. Thousands of aliens stared at them, glowing eyes unblinking. For a moment, Daniel thought they had failed, that the silence meant death. Then, slowly, one alien stomped his foot. Another followed. Then more and more, until the entire arena shook with stomps and cheers. The aliens screamed, their voices filled with wild joy, their bodies trembling with energy. They were not demanding more, they were giving honor. The alien leader raised her arms, her voice cutting through the storm of cheers. Humans, you are no longer weak. You are not prey. You are masters of sound, wielders of the storm. Today, you are warriors. The crowd roared louder than ever before. Some aliens slammed their weapons together in salute. Others bowed deeply, their glowing eyes fixed on the humans with respect instead of scorn. The humans stood frozen, unable to believe what had just happened. Daniel lowered his guitar slowly, his chest heaving. He looked at the aliens bowing before them, and a small smile tugged at his lips. Heavy metal, something born in the chaos of Earth, had united two species in a storm of sound. What was once a mistake had become history. The humans had not just played music, they had given the galaxy its first true concert of chaos. And in return, the aliens had given them something far greater than applause. They had given them honor.